I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. I've not been in this room for a while, and I see that it's changed a little bit. We've got an amazing opportunity today to really share information and to really understand, from your own perspective, what the scene looks like. My name is Beverley Mason, as you know, and I've just started the process of working with Kumba and the Advanced Network to try and understand the marketplace, the scene, how it stands at the moment. Okay, great, sorry, I'm just getting used to this clicker. As you probably heard from Surya, the idea is that we should try and find where there are great links to understand what's happening with young musicians from Black and ethnic minority communities. The whole purpose of this research is to really try and support the idea of excellence and also to support the journeys that young musicians are going through. We're most keen also to hear from you, and we've started a kind of three-phase research process, and this is really phase one. We don't have all the answers yet, we certainly don't, and we really want to hear from you about what you may be able to contribute to the journey. So phase one is really we're going to map the landscape. We want to find out where we are now, who is doing what in terms of access, and where that journey is taking those young musicians to the next level, and how it's translating into appearances or participating in national youth orchestras or on ensemble music making. We're particularly interested in looking at the genre of classical music and jazz. In our next phase, which will be really during October and December, we're very keen to identify and develop specific case studies where there's effective practice taking place. And of course, this can only really be achieved with contributions from yourselves in the room, for you to share with us those stories where effective practice is happening. And the third phase is really going to be in the new year, where we'll have collected all that information, talked to parents, musicians, talked to practitioners, educators, and to pull the evidence together about what are the issues affecting young musicians' journey. Are there barriers? Are the barriers changing? What do the barriers look like today that they might have looked, how they may have differed from the previous years? As a starting point, we want to just get a sense of what actually is out there. So we've commissioned a tailored report from the DCMS just to look at the activities of ethnic minorities in taking part in music. And we're going to look specifically at adults, young people, and again, of course, we're going to look at playing musical instruments, composition. But this has to be a regional story because there will be massive differences depending on population spreads around participation and contributions. So we'll be looking at this by region. But this story is hosted, or if you like, is housed in the idea of economic and social context. As David Lammy said, if you look at an orchestra, the composition says more about the social and economic situation, more so than it is about ethnicity. One thing we should also recognise is that economic decline, economic transition impacts us all. At the moment, Black and ethnic minorities actually hold fewer assets at the moment. So the resources for actually paying for music lessons, additional training, may not be as great as it might have been in years of plenty. So the issue about access is still very key to us. What I'd also like to, let's just go back one slide. What I'd like to do also is to have a look at the aspirations of the middle classes. Black middle classes are very interested in the development of their children's education, as we all are, but there's a particular focus that those middle classes have around making sure that they integrate and interface with the school and have an active sort of plan for working with schools, and are very, very careful to try and support their children when they face racism at school, because they do face racism at school. And this kind of backdrop informs the way that some of the young musicians are brought up in those family environments. Sometimes it's actually quite positive, but other times it can be quite challenging for the young musicians too. So we've taken a quick snapshot at the roots to ensemble music making, and we have a very fragmented at the moment emerging picture in terms of profile. As we've heard, the access for emerging organisations, the composition is quite good, particularly looking in sort of in the conurbation areas. And when young musicians move through to the idea of joining ensemble groups or youth orchestras, that number tends to tip down. Moving through to conservatoire, and those who actually apply and are accepted into conservatoire, the number dips again to about 5.4%. And if we look at professional orchestras, and I'm talking about classical music orchestras, we can see for ourselves what the composition looks like. And you might ask that question, what does it matter? But if we just think about the kind of trend that's happening with young musicians at a professional level, an advanced level, those who are advancing their skills, what's happening to them? Are they going to university? Are they going to conservatoire? This chart just shows you very quickly there's a bit of a drop-off now. The top line shows you those who are applying, and the bottom line, the red line, shows you those who've been accepted. From 2006 through to present day, we saw a 48% success rate of those who applied got into conservatoire. And in last year, that number had dropped to 27%. We've also taken a look at previous data that's been collated, and about 7 or 8 years ago, I should say, Youth Music sponsored a report which actually specifically looked at music making, ensemble music making amongst young ethnic minority children. And I'll just go through these results very quickly. Essentially, there was an interest amongst those musicians who were surveyed and their families in music. That was very high. Even if they weren't learning an instrument, there's still a very high interest in music. And concert going was not something that was alien to them necessarily. There was no real evidence of a lack of appetite for going to choirs or orchestras. It's just that in their cases, their preferences might be lying elsewhere. And the same sorts of criteria happened amongst the sort of wider community, that in terms of gender, more girls were taking part, and perhaps there's a bit more drop-off as children approached year 9 to 11 at school. In terms of BAME, there was a trend to look at taking up instruments that were keyboard-based, piano, and then string-based, guitar and violins, but not so much woodwind and brass. There's a lot to see on this chart. I'm not going to take it all up because I think the panel will take some of these key themes today. One of the conditions of the research was really finding that somehow back in 2005 that a lot of institutions, music services, schools and organisations realised that there was a real need to try and look more deeply into the context of why young musicians weren't able to take part or even thinking about taking part in music making in an ensemble setting. And the idea of the lack of relevance of music education at school, technical factors like logistics, financial costs, and the cultural setting, religious beliefs or cultural traditions, and also the parents' perception of what classical music or making music in an ensemble setting might entail. So in terms of recommendations, the survey master said that really it was important for organisations, for policy makers, for schools to really get together and think about the curriculum, think about whether there was actually a relevance in the curriculum to the musicians, but in particular to support the teachers, to support them in teaching and in supporting the young musicians themselves. And a key factor, of course, is role models, the idea of having music leaders of a BA&E background or people who are in the music sector coming in to talk to young musicians to help with letting them see a world beyond themselves. There was some mention of the Il Sistema in Harmony programme, and that's been tremendously rewarding for young musicians who've taken part. But of course, this has been a kind of driven by social and a need to improve standards in music education, as well as trying to ensure excellence along the way. And in the last, 3 years, as these In Harmony setups have been going, there's been quite a bit of evaluation, but we're not absolutely sure at this point how this particular system will be really sustainable, because they're quite expensive to run. But the one great thing about this El Sistema In Harmony model is that it really brings communities together. It absolutely hits the mark in terms of ensuring that the children's aspirations and ability to perform well in school, to improve their musical studies, that's really, really hit the mark there. The relationships between teachers and families, parents are now coming into schools and talking to teachers. So that's been a really positive environment that's been created. Also, on top of that, for many parents, perhaps who come from very socially deprived areas, it's been the first opportunity that they've had to have access to classical music experience. And I've got a little quote here from a 9-year-old girl who said, and this kind of demonstrates the kind of the benefits, if you like, of studying music in a sort of environment, is that there's a spillover into other areas such as mathematics. One of the partners in the In Harmony project is Sphinx, a US organisation, and I'll just very quickly say that in the Sphinx model, which is essentially around ensuring that there is focused effort around creating opportunities for training, courses for African American and Latino musicians, the success rate has been tremendously powerful over the last 10 years, starting from a position of really quite a low visibility. Sphinx are now making sure that their orchestras are running fully, their 2 orchestras are running fully, and they also have been able to say that their top graduates are getting into the top schools across the US. Right, so I'm just going to sum up really very quickly. We know the marketplace has changed. We know that there's an increased opportunity to see more musicians of ethnic minority backgrounds into conservatoire, but it is about that journey of excellence. And I think we're going to revisit the idea of looking at diversity in the classical music structure. Certainly there's been an element of trying to ensure that people work collaboratively together, and the exciting thing today is that with the advanced network we're actually looking to see what you may have to say, what you may be able to contribute towards the research. So we want to count stats, but this is very much a qualitative study. So we're really here to ask you for your help and advice and support. And my final kind of commentary really is, why is it important to count? Who's counting? Why should we know the numbers? Well, my feeling is that if we don't know the numbers, people's perceptions of what's happening are coloured by misinformation, disinformation. So just a couple of months ago in the FT, we saw that the FT, the first comment, rather than comment about the LSSO's wonderful performance, it was saying there aren't many black faces in the audience, in the orchestra. Maybe the numbers say something different, but the fact is that punch through from access to advanced education to professional career in musicianship, is that translating through? And I'll end on a quote, which I think probably is going to be picked up on the panel today, from Kwame. That which is not articulated does not exist. We've been really bad at articulating the links between what could be seen as peripheral activity and its impact on the mainstream. And I think that kind of says it all, really, is we need to be able to identify what's out there and good practice that's out there. And I really look forward to talking to you all in the future, on the phone, on email, about what contributions you might be able to make to the advanced network. Thank you.